Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of your weekly dose of creativity. This week I'm joined by Rachel Harris, the founder of Accountant She and StriveX. Rachel works to empower business owners, influencers and fellow accountants through providing practical financial strategies and education. Whilst accountancy isn't often associated with creativity, and so you're probably wondering why I've invited her onto the podcast, Rachel is working hard to change the perceptions around this career path and around the financial industry as a whole through her work and the content she creates. This was such an interesting episode to record, and I hope you enjoy it. So we will get straight into it with our question from Lorna, which was, what is your biggest achievement or the thing that you're most proud of within your business over the past 12 months?
It's a hard question, only because I feel like choosing one is quite hard. I have done a lot of work on myself of like being able to say I'm proud of myself out loud.
Yeah.
And I'd say for me, one of my really big audacious goals in life is I would love if the accounting industry as a whole was measured on a timeline before and after me. And I feel like every single day that happens. Like I was in Downing Street last week and no other practicing accountant has ever done that before. And so,
amazing.
I feel like every single day with like really small, tiny little chips away, the accounting industry is becoming measured before and after me in terms of impact, the way that a workplace can feel, the way that being an accountant can feel, the way that it looks like to be an accountant and what having an accountant feels like too.
If you were, like, in your ideal world, if someone were to describe being an accountant, what would that look like?
Yeah, if I could write it.
Yeah, if you could write it.
Be like Legally Blonde. That's the vibe. I want people to see becoming an accountant as, I think it's always been a benchmark of, when I was choosing to become an accountant at school, I always knew it was a good, strong job that like my parents would be proud of. And that if I said at a networking event, people would think, oh yes, that's a good job. I think it's always been that. But I think it has come with wearing a backpack of a very heavy stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And my job is changing that. And it's changing the way that people perceive being an accountant into something that, we work with Love Islanders, people that have just come off shows like Traitors and Bake Off. And we just work with such incredibly passionate, values-driven people. And I would love to be the person that disrupts that concept of what being an accountant is, as well as what having an accountant feels like too.
You just kind of answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway because I think there's more into it. So you've just said that you want to be like a disruptor within like the finance industry, within accountancy. How do you do that on a day-to-day basis, and you've touched on what it means to you, but can you kind of dive deeper into it?
Of course. So I do that in 3 different ways. My life is sort of split into three sections. So the first is I own a multi-7-figure accounting firm. Our core focus and our goal is to be the accounting firm of choice for business owners who are aligned by a desire to feel better about their finances. I think so many people can scale a business to £1 million and no one ever says to them, but how does it feel? Yeah, you're making great money, but like, are you having a good time? Are you, are you getting one step closer to the reason that you became self-employed in the first place? And so within the accounting firm, that's exactly what we do. We work with business owners, influencers, and celebrities to change the way that they feel about their finances. And we do that through passing over the day-to-day finance function to us. Then within Accountant She, I create completely free, accessible, consumable, long and short form content, which teaches business owners exactly how to do that. Some of those decide to become clients, but others, maybe have an accountant that they're really happy with, and they just use my content to top up their existing knowledge to change the way they feel about their finances. And through doing that, I create lots of content for other practice owners as well. Again, I think through my journey, I have learned a lot the hard way, and so would love to help people bypass a lot of the mistakes that I made along the way. And so I have the Practice Owners podcast. I sell a lot of the blueprint that exists within our business, a sort of franchise on the inside. I sell that to other firm owners. And then the third part of my life is my personal brand. And so I work with business owners before, during, and after going on shows like Dragon's Den. I do a lot of live TV. I do This Morning, BBC News, ITV News. I consult with places like Downing Street on how to translate large complex topics like politics, economics, and the budget into content that people will really lean into and deeply understand.
How do you say, with the creating the content, because obviously a lot of people would probably consider finance content maybe to be a little bit boring. You can easily switch off from it. How do you keep it interesting for your kind of ideal audience to view?
So the way I would describe it is most people's first thought is, that's boring.
Yeah.
And I feel so strongly that the UK education system almost tells us that it's boring. It tells us that lots of parts of, life that we learn at school is hard. Exercise, for example. I was taught that exercise was the beep test. It was a timed run. It was this really competitive situation that, unless you were in the 1%, it was not good. And it was a painful exercise.
Yeah.
And again, since leaving school and becoming an adult, I've learned that productivity doesn't just happen between the hours of 9 and 3. Productivity looks very different to what it looked like when I was at school. And exercise, to me, is a really joyful thing that is things like reformer Pilates and going for a hot girl walk. And exercise is the perfect example of something at school that we're taught it's hard and boring and you have to crowbar it into when and how you want to do it. That for lots of us, since leaving school, we've discovered joy through exercise and joy in moving our body and progression. And I'd say my job is very similar. My job is to turn the bleep test into reformer Pilates, but finance edition, maths edition. We're taught at school that maths is something that you either get or don't get, and that you're good at it or you're bad at it. Unless you're in the top set or you're joining the mathletes, you're just not going to be set up for a career in finance. And actually, you don't have to be good at maths to be an accountant. You don't have to be good at maths to own an incredible business. And so my job is showing people the joy of numbers, business, and maths in the same way that I discovered through reformer Pilates when the beep test traumatized me at school.
I generally don't think I've ever met someone who sounds so excited. Like, you talking about like finance and stuff there has got me excited about it, and it's normally a topic I don't really want to touch on because I'm just like, I was quite good at maths, but I just avoid it, which is, I probably shouldn't be admitting to an accountant.
No, but it's so interesting, right? Because the numbers behind your business is the number one thing that will dictate whether or not your business wins or loses, and whether you succeed or you fail. And so many people become self-employed for financial freedom, for goals in their personal life, that the numbers are the only thing that will let them achieve that goal. And so many people shy away from the numbers and are not interested or feel crippled or paralyzed to take an interest in their numbers. And so my job is actually a translator to help them translate the goals that they set when they started the business into bite-sized chunks of information, or one little scorecard with 5 numbers on that I say, check this thing every single week, and you'll be able to work out whether or not you can quit your job and move to Bali.
And what would those 5 things be?
So different for every business. For me, for example, I again operate in I'm running 3 different businesses at the same time. And so the elements of the business that are really important to me are the work that's coming in, the inquiries that I'm receiving into the business, the amount of revenue that's generated per team member. And so something that we did really early on in our business is make sure that every single member of staff is responsible for at least one number every single day. They're responsible for one number in the business. So every team member that generates revenue, they understand on a daily basis how much revenue they are generating for the business. And as an internal team, we are KPI'd on client response time, onboarding time. And so the KPIs within the business are really strong. From every single person in the business is responsible for one number, all of the way up to that information being fed to me on a daily and weekly basis so that I can just make great decisions. And that's my job, is teaching people you don't have to know all of the numbers. You need to work out the right numbers, and you need to work out how to respond to them quickly in a way that means if you're doing that on a daily basis, in 3 months' time, you will still have a business.
Is there one that comes up frequently for every business that you recommend? Or is it just different?
Yeah, so
it depends type thing.
Again, if I was a mechanic and I looked under the bonnet of a car, there would be a few things that in every business I would default check. And so for most businesses, that is going to be turnover. It's going to be a profit. The most important one for every single business is cash. And cash is the one thing that a lot of people feel confused by. They feel confused that, if you are on accounting software, you could run a profit and loss, but that might not actually reconcile to the amount that you have in your bank. And so having an awareness of cash is really important. And as with most things in finance, it's a spectrum. there's full-blown cash flow forecasting on jazz hand software that I can build for you. But also, just having an awareness of cash is really important. Having an awareness of what's in your bank account at the moment, what's going to come in, what's going to go out. Can you get what's going to come in faster? And what's got to go out, can you push that back at any time? And so just having an awareness of cash is the most vital thing that you'll ever be able to do as a business owner. And so I teach every single one of our clients, we teach them how to do a financial well-being routine, which again is I'm your PT, you're in the gym, let's go. Don't think about what you're doing, follow me. Let's go through this routine every single month. And it's things like, do you know your margins? Do you understand the changes in margins? And a really great accountant, forget compliance. You can file your accounts, you can do your tax return, you can do that with any accountant. A great accountant will give you the ability to understand as a business owner, if you have a spare 60 minutes of time, where in your business you should be spending that time to generate the maximum impact for your business. That's what an accountant should actually be able to do. That's my job. I would be able to look under the bonnet of your business and say, that might be a 10 grand thing that you can sell, but you're making no money on it because it costs you so much time. Have you thought about passive income? Have you thought about creating something once that you can sell over and over again? And so my job is to help you not just look at the numbers, but get into them, get comfortable with them, get dirty in the numbers and really work out, if you have a spare 60 minutes of time in your business, where are you spending it and why? That's my job.
That's really, yeah, that makes so much sense. And on your content online, there often expenses come up and things like you didn't realize you could expense this or whatever. How can a business owner I'm going to put a caveat here, get legally more creative with their finances?
Of course, yes. So my job is, I love the tax system. I love the tax system that we're a part of. I think being a business owner in the UK is bloody brilliant. Was I chatting to Downing Street last week about making it more incentivized to stay and not move to Dubai? Absolutely, I was. I think being a business owner in the UK is brilliant. I'm a huge advocate for, not outsourcing work to other countries, keeping everything in the UK, maximising the economic benefit that we have as business owners. And one of the best bits and the best opportunities that we have as business owners is we get to choose where we spend money. Sometimes for the first time in our lives, in a business sense, we are choosing suppliers that we can work with that are aligned with our values, suppliers that we can work with that make us feel good about the business and more confident. And I don't know about you, but sometimes business money feels like free money. And it's great to be able to choose to spend that in ways that just feels good. And so that's the full context of my job, is to make sure that you are paying the correct amount of tax, and that's the lowest amount of tax as possible, but making sure that it's correct. So if you were employed and you got a pay slip and there was extra tax on there, you'd make sure you got it removed. That's my job too. And so with allowable expenses, when you become self-employed, lots of people will say, put that through the business. And you'll be thinking, why does everyone keep saying that to me? I don't understand why people are saying that. The difference is, when we're employed, we pay tax on our income. When we're self-employed, we actually pay tax on our profit. And our profit is the difference between our income and our expenditure. I, as your accountant, generally, if we're reviewing your accounts, can't do too much to help you generate more income other than giving you the tools to do it yourself. But with your expenses, what I can do is make sure that you are paying the right level of tax and that you are claiming everything that you are entitled to. And lots of business owners do not know what they are entitled to. So if you were preparing your own accounts, for example, you would just go through your bank statement and look at what you've spent in the year. But there's some really easy quick ticks that through going through your bank statement, you might not actually know that you can claim. So the first and the easiest quick tick is a use of home allowance. You can claim a reimbursement from HMRC for using your home as an office. The standard flat rate is £6 a week. That's £312 a year. So that's £312 that you can extract from your company completely tax-free and get extra corporation tax relief at 25% on the £312. That's the first easy quick tick. The second is, if you started a business, if you're anything like me, you're using your personal mobile phone for the business because you don't want to look like a drug dealer who carries around two phones. So you've got one phone for the business, social media, everything, WhatsApps, all of it's merged, and you're using your phone for both. We can process a claim to reimburse you completely tax-free for using your personal phone bill through the business as well. And that's just if you imagine your screen time report, I will say to you, what percentage of your screen time relates to the business? Because again, if you're anything like me, by the time your working day is done, you don't even want to bloody look at your phone. So for me, the business use for my phone is in like the 80% of my phone. And so we process that through the business completely tax free. Mileage is another one that lots of people don't know they can claim. And then lots of my more creative content moves into the areas that people might not know they can claim if they want to be really proactive. So that's things like extracting pension. So you can extract up to £60,000 in profit, tax free personally and tax free for corporation tax relief through your limited company every year. You can set up gym memberships. We pay for our gym memberships. We pay for the whole team's gym memberships. We go on an all-inclusive holiday every year. We pay for private medical, private dental. That paid for my Invisalign. I've got designer sunglasses. All of the good stuff through the limited company. And my job is helping people understand this stuff. We're not taught how to run a business at school. It's really easy to incorporate a company on Companies House, and you don't have to take a test before you do it. But we should be given the tools to like make this work for us. And so my job is helping you to understand why these expenses are important in the first place, because it's education first, action second. So why does it matter? Why is this important? And so I teach people how to improve the quality of their life whilst reducing their tax bill.
What's the most unexpected expense that someone could put on there, like put down as an expense that most people wouldn't know about?
Good question. I mean, trivial benefits is a really great one that lots of people don't understand. So trivial benefits is a tax incentive in the UK that is actually set up to make sure that you can give your employees gifts if ever you want to. So a team member of mine bought a new house this weekend, and so I used trivial benefits to give her something, which actually means that she doesn't have to pay tax on it. That's why it exists, but we can also claim it as directors too. So every single year, you can actually extract up to £300 from your limited company completely tax-free, as long as it meets a couple of criteria. Has to be £50 or less, can't be exchanged for cash. And so what a lot of people do is they buy gift vouchers. They'll buy 6 lots of an Amazon gift card through their limited company every single year, and it's completely tax-free. So trivial benefits is a really easy one, where me and my husband actually buy gift cards, and that's how we do our Christmas shopping for each other. Every single year, we do our Christmas shop through our limited company.
Wow.
All of the way through to, I once had a client who actually expensed a boob job.
Wow.
Yes. Can you guess what she did for a job?
Guess something within like either beauty, like some sort of beautician, like that sort of field, or like modelling would be my guess.
So she was an OnlyFans creator.
Wow.
And you could probably imagine this went quite viral on TikTok and actually resulted in my first ever live TV appearance. And yeah, we had a creator who, we had a OnlyFans creator that was wanted to expense a boob job, and I was terrified. It went viral, and I was like, I'm going to be known as the boob lady forever. And actually, the overarching theme and the biggest comment that I got from people afterwards was, you listen to her, my accountant doesn't listen to me. You know, if I ask questions, it's just a no, and not a let's look at this together and work out if there's a way that we can do it. Obviously, like, we don't niche. We don't have a portfolio full of OnlyFans creators. I've never been asked that question before. And the reality is that even as an accountant, the training and all of the exams that I sat, those curriculums were built in a time where OnlyFans creators, that wasn't a job. Being an influencer wasn't a job. Being a celebrity wasn't a job. And so my job is to interpret these rules. And I stand between you as the client and HMRC. And the biggest thing that I'll ever be able to do, and this is a huge part of our onboarding and training with the team, I've got 20 full-time members of staff across 2 offices. It's values. It's core values. It's asking more questions than you answer. It's really helping people to make sure they feel heard and listened to.
How would you change the current accounting curriculum that is based on years ago when a lot of these jobs didn't exist? Like even things like social media manager and photographers and stuff probably didn't exist when that curriculum was created. How would you change it to adapt to the current climate of
for
careers?
Sure. So it's actually not the curriculums that are outdated, it's actually the guidance from HMRC. So if you imagine an accountant's job, if you imagine if you're a doctor and you train and you qualify as a doctor, imagine you train and qualify as a doctor, and then every spring and every autumn, the British government decide to change where the organs are and to change the way that you deliver medication. And so every single time you have to do something, you have to check again. What's the latest guidance and how does it work? That's exactly what being an accountant is. So we train and we qualify. Every spring and every autumn, the British government release a budget. which changes tax rates, it changes the rules. They bring in new initiatives and they bring in new funding. And from the minute that budget goes live, clients are ringing me saying, what does that mean for me? And so we have this, but at the same time, we also have legislation and tax rules that haven't been updated for some of them 30 years. And so there's no legislation on what expenses content creators can claim. There is no expenses on what an OnlyFans creator can claim, all of the way through to travel content creators who travel but do technically receive a personal benefit from their job. There is literally no guidance. And so it's not that the curriculum is outdated, it's actually that the guidance from HMRC is outdated and that the governing bodies are working as hard as they can to push for the government to do that too.
How are the governing bodies working towards making those changes?
Yeah, of course. So I actually sit on the board of directors for one of the biggest governing bodies for accountants in the UK. It's AAT. I'm a very proud director and trustee, and so I sit on the governing board. And even that, even having people like me on their board is their contribution to just making sure that this is a qualification that is work ready and work first. So many people choose to become an accountant instead of going to university. And so we're trying to make this a really inclusive experience that means that, regardless of your socioeconomic household income and your background, this is a really attainable career for you. And so, governing bodies work incredibly hard to make sure that this is a career that people choose at school. And again, that's where my job comes in as well. My full-time job is trying to make being an accountant cool for everyone and trying to, I employ people now who literally used my content to decide that they wanted to be an accountant. And so I see every single day the impact that even just being an advocate, an influencer, and a creator can have on an entire industry.
Do you say is the most important thing, when you're creating the content with this in mind, being a content creator, influencer, however you want to call it, what's the most important thing that people should be keeping at the forefront of their mind, regardless of the industry they're creating for?
I'd say having personal values. So, when you start a business, lots of business books will tell you that you should have core values and a focus for the business. And I have them for myself too, as an individual, but also as a creator. I understand where the boundary and what I will and won't share is. I have a boundary that I will share healed scars, not open wounds. If something's going on in my personal life, how much of that do I want to and I'm willing to share? All of the way through to integrity and honesty is really important to me. I have a large following online, but I also have a business to run and a team members to protect. And I'd say almost treating your brand as a business from day one and creating these values that you will uphold that, in the end will end up benefiting your audience. For example, my integrity means that I won't work with certain brands for brand deals. I'll only work with brands that I've worked with, that I would be willing to pay or have paid for full price before I do a brand deal for. And so bringing those values into your business as a creator is really important as well. And, for me, it's something that a lot of my community talk to me about a lot is around why they choose to follow me.
Yeah. And as someone who, like you said, you've got 3 businesses, your hours are probably ridiculous and I'm basing this based on your Instagram stories when you put what you're doing in the day and stuff. How do you schedule the time to be creative, especially when working in a field that's generally not considered to be creative?
Yeah. And I'd say again, for me, as a young girl who loved maths, one of the most toxic things that school taught me was that you either were or were not creative, and that you either were or were not good at STEM subjects, for example, just to group them together. And so because I was good at STEM subjects, I was therefore not creative, and so was not
exactly the same experience in school. And I actually got told not to do an art GCSE because I was better at a more academic subject.
Yeah. And this is where, schools are institutions that are rewarded for, how many people they can put into university, and I guess maybe STEM subjects increase their chances. And so, but it was this mutually exclusive thing that you were either one thing or another. Again, sport was painful unless you were good at it. If you were not good at it, it was painful. Maths you're good at or bad at. And you're either creative or you are not. And so for a long time, I actually did a TED talk on how being an introvert is a superpower. And again, as introverts, as people who love maths and science, we are never the main character. We are represented in TV shows and movies like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. That's the representation that introverted people are not creative and good at maths. Those are the characters that we are shown. And so, yeah, I for a long time carried this weight of like being creative and being good at maths meant one thing or another thing. And so I tried really hard to almost like biohack my introverted self to make me more creative and more productive. And so understanding how your brain works will change your life. And so allocating 30 minutes in your diary to be productive probably isn't going to make you be productive. And allocating 30 minutes to be creative probably isn't going to make you creative. What would actually help you to be creative is allocating 2 hours, with the first 15 minutes allocated to deep dive research or helping, So if I was going to create a YouTube video on how to become an accountant, as I was getting ready to film the video and doing my hair and makeup, I would watch content similar to that content. I would search for that content on YouTube. Like, planes don't just go from being on the ground to being in the air. There is a takeoff and a landing. And so when I need to be creative or I need to change state from deep focus work to creativity, I make sure I allocate time in my diary for a takeoff and a landing. And that will be deep dive research. It will be looking at content similar to the content that I want to create to just get my brain thinking, oh, could I do that? What about this? How do I do that? And so blocking out a takeoff and a landing to help your brain change state. Because if you block out an hour in your diary to be creative, you are not going to be creative.
Yeah.
For me,
I'll sit there staring, going, I know what I want to write, but it's just not coming.
Especially when they're big tasks that can feel quite overwhelming. So if you were planning the launch of a product, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got a whole day blocked out and I don't know what to do. For me, that's going to be a dog walk, listening to a podcast, talking to me about how to launch a product. So I can just take off and like get into that headspace before I then complete the task. And understanding that your brain will literally get whiplash if you try and move it too quickly between tasks, and grouping together tasks that sit right is really important. So I do monk mode every morning, which is where I do like deep focus work. I bulk all of my quick ticks together. I clear through my inbox. I operate on inbox 0. And so that is all part of that almost like biohacking your productivity to make sure that you are operating with a finite resource, which is time, to get the maximum impact.
Do you navigate that then? Say you've got a manic day, you're needing to be in 200 places at once, and you still need to make sure that you're grouping like those tasks together, but it's not always possible. How do you navigate that on like your really, really busy days?
I actually think one of the most important things to remember is that nobody emails the fire brigade. Like, if you're clearing your inbox and you're getting really stressed, like if your house is on fire, it's not going to be an email. Nobody emails the fire brigade. It's not that deep. And the second is having proper processes in place. So most people would allocate time to clear their inbox, but actually what's happening is two separate things. The first task that needs to be allocated is a review of your inbox, delete the spam, work out what the quick ticks are, and allocate time for any tasks. And then the second thing that needs to happen is you then actually need time to complete the tasks and the quick ticks. And again, that's a perfect example of like you're trying to make your brain do things that are actually quite different. So sweeping your inbox, quite easy, would probably take about 20 minutes if you had 100 emails. Mark everything as read, delete the spam, bonus points for unsubscribing to that newsletter, allocate things as quick ticks, tasks and projects, allocate time for the projects, allocate time for the tasks. And then the second thing that needs to happen is you then need to allocate more time to actually do the emails. So the sweep of the inbox is one thing, the doing of the emails is the other. And all of this is trial and error. Everybody's brain works differently. But really just like trying to understand, if I've allocated time for a task, did I need more or less time? How can I do that? How can I do that again? Almost writing processes and Bibles for yourself in like how to do these things in a way that just meets your needs. And again, like I'm super introverted. The reason I get out really early is because I love having 2 hours of the day when nobody else is at work. No, got 20 employees. If one person has a problem on one day in a week, that's still 20 problems in a week. And so I love that time, and I just really deeply lean into like how I work, what type of work feels good, and how I can hack that from it.
And going back to your TED talk, why do you think being an introverted is a superpower? Because I'd really like your take on this, because in my first episode of this season, I talked about it with Kirsty, who's a graphic designer, because we're both introverts as well. And I feel like it's a really underrated personality trait.
Well, I literally consider it a superpower. And I think it's because introverts spend so much time self-reflecting. We're actually very, very self-aware. And having a clear understanding of your strengths and your weaknesses can absolutely change your life as a business owner. I'll be the first person to delegate something if I am not the right person to do it. I'll be the first person to ask for help with something. And I think when you spend so much time looking inward, it actually means that you are much better often at delegating, asking for help, working out how to do something, and scaling a team. And again, as a leader, that's a very attractive quality for people to come and work for you, is somebody who's not afraid to ask for help, somebody who's not afraid to be seen failing. And so that self-awareness, I think, is a really strong part of being an introvert that I absolutely love. Again, I think being introverted means that if I say yes to something, it's actually because I really want to do it.
Yeah.
So like the type of work that I say yes to, the type of work that I say no to, that is a really good way of telling me how much I want to do something as well.
Yeah. And as an introvert, how have you built the confidence to like create and show up online? Because I know for me, sometimes that is the last thing I want to do, because I just want to be almost in the shadows, like coasting along, observing rather than pushing myself forward. So I'd love to hear kind of how you have navigated that.
Yeah, it definitely requires an extra layer of like self-protection and self-awareness of, again, what types of work you like, what types of work you don't like. I think in lots of ways sometimes it's harder to get yourself across online remotely through content, through even things like this. It's harder to put yourself out there remotely versus in person. People can feel how you feel, and they can feel your body language, they can feel your energy. And so for me, again, that is making sure that I am the most impactful with that time. So again, planning content is a very separate task to recording the content, and like really deeply planning content with like scripting, with the hooks, with the visuals, like that's a very different task that I can do when I look like an egg in the comfort of my own home. Whereas creating the content is very, very separate. And again, making sure that you've got a takeoff and a landing, and that you're not just going from your desk 1 minute to shining a light and a camera in your face the second. There needs to be a process there to get my brain and my introverted self ready to pretend to be an extrovert for about 20 minutes. So bulking those tasks together, but also deeply preparing for them. Again, lots of people think they don't like content creation. That's not the bit that they don't like. They don't like the thinking of what to say. They don't like the editing. Actually, the content creation, if you love what you're talking about, content creation is actually quite easy. It's the preparing, it's the planning, it's the scheduling, and it's the editing that lots of people don't like. It's actually not content creation. And so how can you delegate that stuff wherever you can? How can you deeply research what's going to perform well and what's not going to perform well? And I'd say my content and my platform specifically is probably a really great example of deep dive nerdy analytics combined with content. Like I never aim to go viral. I don't think I ever, apart from Boobgate, have gone massively viral. I've just really gradually and intentionally built a deeply educated audience over 4 years that's now grown to 150,000. And that's the goal. That's always the goal, is never to go viral. It's to create a community that you feel like you know them. I've, again, through my job, know lots of people who go viral overnight, and very often they feel like they don't know who they're talking to. I am so lucky I've never had that. My audience has grown with me. It's grown with my business. And I never feel scared to post things online. Like I'm quite vulnerable. I share a lot online, and I feel I have that because the community has grown with me. It doesn't feel like I'm speaking to 90,000 people on Instagram. It feels like I'm talking to my friends.
If you were to look at the analytics when it comes to like researching and deciding what piece of content to post next, what angle you're going from or whatever, what analytics would you go to look at?
Good question. So I have a full-time team member, which is digital marketing, and 20% of her time every single week is allocated to what we call fail time. So we as a team, me and her, are KPI'd to fail, which has always enabled us to not be scared to be seen failing. It's always enabled us to be motivated to try new things. We want to be trying new things. We want to be failing fast, failing often, because it means that we'll succeed more as well. And so 20% of her working time is dedicated to just deeply researching specific topics. Recently, I said to her, I want to perfect my ability to do voiceovers of short form content that is not really bloody boring. Lots of people will do a day in the life short form video that's just them saying what they're doing in the video, but I don't need to say what I'm doing in the video because they can see what I'm doing in the video. What they actually want is me saying, you will never believe what happened to me today. Like, that's what they want at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so she spent a day of her time researching what types of audio voiceovers of short form video content, that's how specific we're doing, what performs well. And that is a strong hook. It's telling a story. It's taking them on a journey. It's not repeating what their eyes can see, because they can already see that I'm eating breakfast and that I'm walking my dog.
Yeah.
It's what happened along the way. What journey are we going on today? And so we're KPI'd to fail. We are KPI'd on deep dive. Every month when we do board meetings, I actually share a lot of our board data online. And so if you ever want to see the deep dive analytics that I get reported, that the team report to me on a monthly basis, specifically in digital marketing, I definitely recommend following me on Instagram.
Do you just create for Instagram, or so you've got the podcast as well? So what other platforms do you create for? And does that process then differ between the platforms?
It does, yes, significantly. So I create content on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, and I have a podcast. So we are weekly hour-long YouTube videos, which are vlogs. We have weekly podcast episodes. We create 3 to 5 times a week on Instagram, 3 times a day on TikTok, and daily on LinkedIn. When I tell you this is,
that's a lot of content.
It's a lot. And again, it takes a village. I've got an incredible team around me that almost, they are the scaffolding, so that my job is to create and be creative with high level strategy. That's my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the data looks very, very different. Like, what performs well on LinkedIn will never perform well on Instagram. The audience is different. The behavior is different. Like, I generally go on LinkedIn on my computer, but I consume short form content on my phone. It's really about understanding your audience. I have a very strong accountant following on LinkedIn. I have a very strong business owner following on Instagram. So just making sure that you are always understanding who your audience is, understanding where you sit, what they want from you as well, and understanding the types of topics that you talk about is really important. But KPIing yourself to fail is one of the best things I've ever done in business. I try and collect no's. I try and aim to be told no as often as possible, because that means I have to ask for stuff. So before we came on, I said to Beth, who do you want me to introduce you to? And that's the sort of stuff that I will constantly be saying to people, can you introduce me to that person, because I really want to talk to them. You just want to be told no as much as you can, because for every no, you probably get 3 yeses.
You're not the first person I've heard say that. So there's a brand designer called Liz Mosley.
Yes,
who did
on my podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
She did the 100 rejection challenge.
Yeah, love that.
So her aim is to get to 100. I was like, I probably need to do that because it'll force me to put myself out there a little bit more. Do you have a favourite platform for creating on?
Yes, I do. I'd say I've got 2. I love Instagram. Instagram was my first platform. That's where I started. I started in one platform on one place with one purpose, and that was to get some clients on Instagram. And so Instagram was the day I became self-employed, was the day I started Instagram. And so Instagram will always feel like community and home to me, which is funny because it's where I have the biggest audience. And so for a lot of people, it would be the scariest, but for me, it's just my favorite. And then I love YouTube. I love YouTube so much. I am a vlog only YouTube channel and just love actually creating the content that I love consuming. Those cozy watch vlogs where it feels a bit productive because you're kind of learning stuff, but it also feels like you're hanging out with your friend. I feel YouTube. Yeah. I just love creating YouTube content so deeply. So YouTube and Instagram for sure.
What would your advice be for a business owner who maybe they do the basics in terms of they post X amount of times a week, but they're not super, super creative with it, and they want to get more creative with their content and just want to have a little bit more fun with it? What would your advice be for them?
Fail. They will not be the person that you've just described will not be posting because they are scared of something failing, scared of something flopping. And I actually think as a business owner, being seen to be failing is really important. That's really important, that you're not scared to own a mistake or be open to feedback, or that you're just learning all of the time. And so many of us as business owners end up doing a job that isn't the actual job. I'm an accountant. I don't prepare accounts anymore. I'm a content creator. I'm a business owner. I'm making decisions that cost me hundreds of thousands of pounds every single day. That's not my job anymore. And so being seen to be open, being seen to fail will just really, again, let those values shine through of who you are as a person and the type of team that you lead. And, you could speak to any one of my team members and put them next to another accountant. I guarantee you could tell which one was mine. for the same
Oh,
reason.
really?
They're not
Yeah.
afraid to fail. They're open. They have really high integrity, really strong sense of like care and giving.
Mhm.
All of those shine through in my content. And just from consuming my content, I guarantee you could spot a member of my team in a lineup for exactly the same reason.
Earlier, you mentioned how you set boundaries for your social media. Like you'll never show the open wound. It'll always be a healed scar. That all, to some, that might seem contradictory to then being openly not afraid to be seen to fail. How do you navigate the two and make sure that you're always at like a happy medium?
I'd say, the first thing to remember is you can't pour from an empty cup. I last year lost someone really close to me very young, and it was just one of the hardest things I've ever experienced in my whole life. And I just don't think it would have done anybody any good talking about it at the time. I think actually content to me serves me as much as I serve other people. It's a place for me to be Rachel, not Rachel who just watched something really awful happen to somebody else. And so it protects me. It helps put boundaries in place. And again, it's not I'm not going to tell this story. It's I'm going to tell this story when I can hear what people have to say back, because people with love, most of the time, out of literally a love for who you are as a person, will share their own stories back to help you feel like there's a community with you. And sometimes you have to be in a certain place to actually be willing to hear that at all. And when you're experiencing grief, it's not the one. And so I very, very often, even if we take this as an example, would experience something really big and really personal, and would meet someone. I actually, on a few days out of this person passing away, I met somebody who follows me. She stopped me in Waitrose and said, "I follow you online," da 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 da, and she couldn't tell. She couldn't tell that anything happened. And I think sometimes people feel like it's not truth, or it's that you're not, but like by keeping something to yourself is not. And actually, it's not. It's about making sure that you feel safe and that you feel protected and that you feel private. Whereas this person that I met still felt like she had complete access to who I am as a person. And she said, "I know you're doing this at the moment. I know you're doing this." And, again, if we bring it back to being a job and being a business, there were times in my life when I was employed that I had stuff going on in the background that I didn't tell my boss because work was a safe place to me. And I consider content to be exactly the same. It's not that I won't talk about it ever, but actually for me right now, work is a safe place. It's a place where I always know who I am. I always know who I need to be to other people. And you always have to have a part of your life that's private, for sure. But I think some people think that being honest is different to being private, and that they're not the same thing. You can be private and be honest at the same time. And so I was very open that I'd gone through something that was really hard and that I'd taken a bit of time off work. But it wasn't until I think 3 months later that I actually opened up and spoke about what that was.
Yeah. I think as well, doing it like that builds the integrity within the community as well, because you gain so much more respect for setting those boundaries. And I think people forget that they can, like you say, you can be honest, but you can still be private. And it's far better to actually share when you, like you say, when you can listen back, because that's the only way you're going to build the community.
Yeah.
Community at the moment is such a buzzword within kind of like marketing sphere, but I think it is also for good reason, because I think most successful businesses and brands you see online have built those communities that genuinely love them, but it's very clear that the person creating it loves their community back. What would your advice be for a business owner wanting to create something like that for themselves?
I'd say clarity on who you are for, and who you are not for is really important. Lots of people, I would really struggle to sell beige as a colour, but I wouldn't struggle to sell blue. Blue is not red, and I could talk about it not being red and it being very blue for a very long time. So clarity on who you are, clarity on who you are not for is really important. And my brand's quite visually iconic. Like, you would be able to see it on your For You page and be like, that's Rachel Harris. Visually, how I'm creating content, what that content looks like and what that content feels like, everyone would be able to point it out of a lineup and say, that's accountancy. However, I'm very sure people come across my content every single day and, like Marmite, think, absolutely not. This is not for me. I want something that feels corporate. I want something that feels different to this. That's great. That saves my time. It saves me having calls with them if they're not right for us. It saves me all of the time, all of the money. And so be more Marmite It's not about being disliked. It's about filtering out those that are no and filtering out those that are yeses. And one of our internal core values is don't be a dick. Our clients have to sign those values when they become clients. Generally, the only person that core value is going to put off is somebody who intends to be a bit of a pain in the arse as a customer. If you are a great person and you're choosing to work with my firm because you love the people that I recruit, don't be a dick. You'd be like, yeah, obviously don't be a dick. I don't want to be around other clients who are dicks. We do a lot of community building, a lot of in-person event. We have like strong client alumni. And I only want people that are willing to like stand with those people and say, I am also a client of theirs. And so the only person that an internal value of don't be a dick is going to put off are people who plan on being dicks within your business.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's quite a nice place to round off. I feel like I've asked all the questions, not answered, sorry. So what question do you want to ask my next guest?
This probably won't surprise you, but I would love to know two things. One, your most recent failure. And two, your biggest failure in business. So most recent and biggest failure.
Can I ask them back at you?
Yeah, of course. Most recent failure is I had to reschedule a meeting this afternoon because my schedule is not scheduling and I hate it and I hate letting people down and I feel like a failure every time I have to move stuff. And the reality is when people want to move stuff with me, I'm like, oh great, I've got half an hour back in my day. So that's good. Second is we're a service-based business and I feel like it took me a long time to work out a really solid strategy for making sure I hired the right people in the right seats every single time. That took me a long time. And I think in business, if I could ever hack a failure, I would choose to hack the right people in the right seats and making sure I understand how to measure if they get it, they want it, and they're competent to do the job. It would have saved me a lot of money.
I want to ask kind of what would your criteria now for that be?
Well, yeah, for sure. So yeah, the three questions I ask in my head for every interview is, does this person get it? Do they understand where we're going? Do they understand what it means to work here? Do they understand that I've got a queue of people waiting to work here? Why do I need to choose you? So do they get it? Do they want it? Do they want it bad enough? We are this weird approach from a bootstrap startup and an accounting firm. So do they get it? Do they want it? And are they competent to do the job? So we have a very intense interview process, which involves technical skills tests, soft skills tests, and vibe checks to make sure that they fit within the firm. And so do they get it? Do they want it? And are they competent to do the job? Are things that we are continuously measuring through recruitment of new team members.
Amazing. And if someone wants to follow you online, where can they find you?
Of course, I would absolutely love to see you. If you've been listening to this and you've got loads of questions for me, I do all of my DMs myself, so I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at accountant_she everywhere that you consume content.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.